Wake up! It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 187. Why is Donald Trump so sleepy? My mind is fading. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist, sleep specialist, and your host for this episode of the podcast. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast family, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. You can always get in touch with the show. DM me through Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter Blue Sky, Threads. We have a dedicated YouTube page where we post all the video content of the show. So when I record the podcast, there is a video component that you can watch for free on YouTube. And if you are a regular listener to the podcast, you know that one of our episodes that we recorded and put on YouTube has done strangely well. It was episode number 30 on cataphrenia, which has now eclipsed 20,000 views. It has been viewed 20,223 times. For the record, all of the YouTube videos of the podcast have been viewed 52,700 times. So that one video out of 186 accounts for 38% of the YouTube viewership, which has always been just the craziest thing to me. So, congratulations to the Cataphrenia video for eclipsing 20,000. And I hope that the Cataphrenia community continues to find some information and some value in it. We might need to relook at Cataphrenia Revisited 2026 in this new year. We will not go into comments, corrections, criticisms because we have an amazing sponsor this week. Before we dive into today's discussion, which I really want to be completely apolitical, I am talking about this issue because it seems to be everywhere in the news. 2 weeks ago, Trump news at a glance from The Guardian, President denies falling asleep in public meeting. 3 days ago, from the New Republic, Trump falls asleep in weird press conference about milk. 3 days ago, Trump, 79, rests his eyes as goons harp on about milk. I mean, there's a, and it's in talk shows, etc. So it just needed to be explored and commented. I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, why don't you do a podcast about this, and we'll give it a shot." I also will throw out an immediate disclaimer: I do not treat or have any in firsthand information about dealing with Donald Trump. I am a physician. He is not a patient of mine. So this is all completely speculative and meant to be in the spirit of education and thinking about our own excessive sleepiness. So that said, um, have you ever wondered what better sleep feels like? And I think this is very germane to today's topic because I think sometimes when you get so mired into not getting enough sleep and getting by with it, you kind of lose sight about what that feels like, especially if, unlike our president, who's on record saying that he sleeps apart from Melania, which a lot of couples do. You might sleep next to a partner, and that may or may not be a positive when it comes to your sleep quality. So, a while back, my wife sent me an Instagram post that showed two folded comforters on a bed, the so-called, Scandinavian sleep method. And under the post, she had written, "I like this." And truth be told, I like it too. I actually had an idea a long time ago for a comforter that Velcroed in the middle. So if partners pulled towards separate sides, you didn't pull the comforter off of one another. It just broke away. It ripped open in the middle because of the Velcro, and you ended up sleeping with two separate comforters. So I guess the Scandinavian sleep method just dispenses with the Velcro, which makes sense because I think Velcro could be kind of scratchy and not ideal for bedding. Um, so enter in this week's podcast sponsor, Sleeping Dove Comforter. If you remember back to our Black Friday episode, we featured them, but it's hard to describe the innovative nature of this product. This comforter is rapidly changing the way people and couples sleep without weird gadgets or noise, just high quality components, enlightened engineering, and frankly, fun. This is not your typical blanket. It's a got a patented what they call soft wing natural cooling system that lets you release heat where you need it most while staying fully covered. So no more kicking up the covers in the middle of the night, waking up cold, trying to find the blanket that's down on the floor, or completely wrapped around your partner in the middle of the night. If your legs are getting a little warm, you simply throw open the panel covering your legs. It's like a little hinged flap, and now your legs can be cool without compromising what you're feeling up top or what your partner's feeling. If you're feeling a little cool up top, you grab the upper panel and pull it back over your chest. The comforter really allows you to fully customize your sleep experience and temperature with your partner, and they're able to do the exact same thing with their own panels that they have. And I have to say that if you have pets, they're going to love these little flaps because when you're sitting there in bed reading or watching a little television or just, kind of being awake in bed, the little flaps are like mini comforters that they can kind of snuggle under while you're watching The Pit or the new season of The Night Manager. I'm going to post a pic on my Instagram to show you how much my two little dogs love getting under these little panels at night. So, quick story, over the holidays, all three of my kids came home, but given their schedules, all arrived at different times. First, my youngest son came, then my daughter and her fiance, and then finally my older son. So, as people were kind of coming and going, they're all cycling through different bedroom configurations. And it allowed all of them to, at some point or another during these holidays, try the Sleeping Dove, and they all loved it. In fact, the comforter nights eventually became this whole thing because I only have one. And so it was interesting to see them kind of fight over it. And then the dogs would figure out who gets the comforter, and then they would just, get up on the bed with whoever got the comforter that night. They didn't really seem to care. They just wanted to snuggle with the child that had possession of the comforter that night. So, whether you're a hot sleeper, the partner of a hot sleeper, you're a sleeper dealing with menopause, which I think this is a really, really great item for those individuals, and hot flashes, or someone like me who can pretty much sleep anywhere, the Sleeping Dove Comforter really delivers targeted comfort without compromise, allowing a shared sleep experience, no separate comforters, with independent sleep customization. So cozy up in the same bed with the same comforter, stay cool, sleep smarter. Check out Sleeping Dove at sleepingdove.com and experience the kind of sleep that might even make your podcast host jealous, and that's saying something. So let's get into it. Um, as I said, I was just kind of looking at what's the news cycle around Trump sleeping, and it seems to be kind of ongoing. New York Times, Trump appears to be fighting sleep during cabinet meeting. Newsweek, Donald Trump responds to claims he fell asleep at a White House event. The Daily Show, Seth Meyers, of course, they all get their kicks with it, and Trump's not alone in this. Bill Clinton famously had sleeping periods. God knows Ronald Reagan did. I was looking through December 4th, 2024. ABC reported Joe Biden appears to fall asleep during a round table in Angola, which I certainly remember. I actually remember that being part of the news. I think somebody actually reached out to me to comment, which I typically refrain from. I'm like, look, I know as much as you do. He fell asleep during a meeting. Let's talk about Dr. Winter. Has Dr. Winter ever fallen asleep in a meeting or a lecture or a car ride or something where he should be awake? Of course I have. I remember being so sleep deprived in medical school that a lecturer, doctor, saw me asleep and actually took my notes because he wanted to make them into a slide because they were so bad, because I kept falling asleep trying to take notes about what this lecturer was saying. Now, you ask, Chris, why were you falling asleep? Well, I was falling asleep because I had been up the night before running a sleep study. And then when that study ended around 6 o'clock in the morning, went home, got something to eat, changed clothes, showered, maybe slept for an hour, and then went back to medical school and tried to make it through a full day of lectures. And you can pretty much guess how that went. So this is not a holier than thou kind of podcast either. Yours truly has fallen asleep at times when he should be awake. So, as we think about this recent media reported showing Trump appearing to nod off or falling asleep during official events, cabinet meetings, press conferences, whatever. This is igniting this sort of discussion about, is he fit for the job? Does he have the energy for the job? And I don't know necessarily that any of these videos or gotcha moments prove that he does or doesn't. I think they're proving that he is likely to fall asleep during these events. And I think the question really starts to become why. And just to kind of throw out there, the defense that the White House always kind of throws out is no, he was just resting his eyes, or nope, he was listening so intently that he preferred to close his eyes. I think he may have fallen asleep during a funeral too, as I recall. So it's all the kind of stuff that your partner says when you are really excited to watch a show, and you're like, "Oh my God, this show's so great!" And you fall, and they're falling asleep. Like, honey, you're falling asleep. But no, 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 I was just resting my eyes. And again, God knows I've been guilty of that as well too. So it really starts to come down to what we've talked about in the past in terms of sleep deprivation is this is happening through one of two mechanisms. He's getting plenty of sleep, but there is something wrong with his sleep, and I'm going to trust that the amazing doctors and medical staff that probably takes care of the president and all those good docs up at Walter Reed or wherever he gets his medical care are probably on top of things like sleep apnea and restless leg syndrome, or nocturnal reflux, or something that might back pain, something that might be causing him problems when he sleeps. So if it's not sleep quality is a problem, it's sleep quantity. And we can look pretty easily back in terms of interviews to see what Donald Trump has said in the past about his own sleep. In a November 2025 interview that surrounded the crown, Saudi Arabia's crown prince, bin Salman, Trump said, quote, "He does not sleep much, and I don't sleep much. Thinking about our countries, I don't want to sleep." And to some extent, you could look at that as pretty admirable. This guy is so passionate about his country and his work that he can't sleep. And I think we've all been in that place where you're so excited about something that it's hard to shut it off and pick it up tomorrow. Um, in an earlier interview, this is back in 2017 when he was on the now, I think, defunct O'Reilly Factor, he told Fox News that he gets about 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night. He goes to bed around 12 to 1, wakes up early to work. He has denied that the clips that show him falling asleep have anything to do with him falling asleep. He simply said, "Look, I'm blinking or resting my eyes." So when you think about somebody of his age, um, adult males typically need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. I'm guessing that somebody who is in the presidency of the United States is probably going to need a little bit more because we know that strong physical and cognitive exertion tends to increase our sleep need. So I think that's something that is important to kind of think about. And we can look back to other presidents. There's nothing about Donald Trump or some of these modern presidents that we've seen fall asleep is particularly earth-shattering. I mean, presidents that go back as far as Thomas Jefferson, who founded the university that I went to, the University of Virginia. And so everybody in Charlottesville, Virginia is, has something to say about Thomas Jefferson. He historically said that he slept around 5 hours per night from around midnight to 5 a.m. Lyndon B. Johnson, also noted for a very historically short sleeping schedules. Bill Clinton functioned on somewhere around 4 to 6 hours of sleep during intense workloads, although he did state in several interviews that he would nap at times. And I'm sure every president does. On Air Force One or during a quiet period, motorcade, you're driving somewhere. I'd be shocked if these individuals aren't taking advantage of some of those times to nap. And a lot of times when somebody says, not just a president, I get 4 hours of sleep. I go to bed at midnight, get up at 4 a.m. and get to work. There's probably periods of sleep that are happening in between there as well too, either planned or accidental. There were some other presidents that exhibited sleep extremes the other way, most notable of which was Calvin Coolidge, who anecdotally slept somewhere on the order of 11 hours or more per night, including naps, which I think is great. When you look at the other end, he's um, utilizing the executive branch for all it's worth and getting his 11 hours of sleep at night. I remember also There was a speech writer, I believe it was for Hillary Clinton, who said he would go 100 hours without sleeping or only getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep. I remember there was a whole news cycle about that. I was asked as in an interview, what do you think about this speechwriter that's come out that says he only sleeps 3 hours per night? I said it's impossible. So um, everybody's sleeping. There is certainly a range there, but I don't think anybody is for long periods of their life only sleeping 3 hours a night. So what does this actually mean? Do we care? I care. I care about the person who's running the free world getting the amount of sleep they need because my first thought goes to sleep deprivation is not fantastic from a cognitive perspective. It impairs memory. So when you're trying to think about details of a situation, memory is going to be impaired. I also think that it lends itself to rash decision making, not paying attention to details. We know that individuals who are sleep deprived are less risk averse. They're also not as good at picking up on cues when you're communicating with people. And there's a lot of what's going on right now that makes me think about that. Like, as you're talking to somebody in public and you can read their facial expressions and maybe you say something that's off-putting or offensive to them and you can immediately see on their face, ugh, I just said something that didn't sit really well with that individual, I think. Body language, when somebody's uncomfortable, you can see it in their posture and their pose and their body. And we know that individuals who are sleep deprived are not picking up on those cues particularly well. So slower reaction times, dysregulated mood, and there's been a lot that's been written about this current president's mood. There was a great New York Times interview recently where they actually got about 4 hours of his time. And when I say they, I think it was like four reporters from the New York Times sat down with him. And at the end of the daily, when they were talking about that episode, one of them said, the thing that struck me was just how volatile his mood would be. He'd be really happy, then he'd be upset, then he's showing off this model of the ballroom that he's constructing. It just he's just kind of all over the place. Which another reporter said, this was not a reporter. I take it back. This was from the Ezra Klein podcast. It was a Republican, a conservative who worked in the Bush administration, who said, sometimes working with Donald Trump is like chasing a squirrel around your garden. And when I think about a comment like that, I really think about attention and focus and detail, not something this current president is really known for. And it makes me wonder if sleep disturbances or sleep deprivation might be lending itself to that. And when you see somebody fall asleep in a cabinet meeting or a meeting about milk or in a UN, situation or a funeral, whatever, I think it's really important to really solidify in your brain this is what sleep deprivation looks like. The person who can fall asleep in all of these situations. The person who's, when his head hits the pillow, he's asleep immediately at night. I have no idea if Donald Trump's head is asleep as soon as he hits the pillow or not at night. But this is a very different picture than the insomnia patient that we often talk about, who struggles to fall asleep at night, who's up and down throughout the night, who, even given the opportunity to take a nap during the day, cannot. This is what an individual who's getting inadequate sleep tends to sort of look like. And so I think that, this current president's frequent late night activities, and we see this, unlike presidents historically, because when a Truth Social post comes out that's kind of all over the place and doesn't make a lot of sense, you can see the timestamp. And, generally what we are being led to believe, this is not an advisor. This is Donald Trump calling into that show in the morning or sending that tweet out late at night. Um, there are anecdotes of him alert, and poring over social media well into the night, and then feeling sort of and appearing drowsy during the day. So I think that this is sort of a cautionary tale for everyone. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you've got people saying really vile things about you all the time. And one of the things that I think about with this president, and you can sort of feel in a certain way that he definitely wants people to like him. He wants awards. He wants praise. And deep down, I think a lot of us seek these types of things. And the bottom line with social media is odds are 50% of people are not giving you that thing you seek. They're cutting you down. They're pointing out flaws. They're making fun of you. They're belittling you, and worse. So I don't think that the social media platform is the place to be when you're the leader of the free world trying to get some sleep at night. I think that is a deep, deep pit of quicksand to fall in when it comes to your own sleep. So I think that Trump's use of Sleepy Joe is now really ironically juxtaposed with his own sleepiness. And I think Fallon is calling him, calls him Sleepy Trump. And this symbol of vigor and virility versus weakness is an important one. I don't look at a president falling asleep in a cabinet meeting as being weak. I see it as maybe a president who needs to reprioritize some things. And I think calling Biden sleepy is sort of come back to bite him a little bit, because I can't imagine an individual in the presidency at the ages of these gentlemen not being sleepy. Um, little fun fact, Thomas Edison also didn't prioritize sleep. And culturally, we sort of reward him and romanticize him as being a hard worker. So anyway, so the key takeaway is that sleep isn't just a personal habit. It's not a sign of strength or weakness. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we have been lobbying against for years within professional sports organizations, Wall Street, climate. I was just up at a private school talking about this. It's all the way from the presidency down to a sophomore at Phillips Andover. Should you go to sleep and get that sleep and maybe get a B on the exam or a five because they do a one through six grading scale? Or should you get your sleep and prioritize the long game? And I think in the current situation we live in, where the long game is always threatened. It's politically threatened, isn't it? I mean, think about, I love reading about Carter and the decisions he made at his own peril in terms of reelection about what to do with the economic crisis that he found himself in. Do I play a short game and risk the economy of the country but get reelected, or play a long game? And one of the things we know about Donald Trump is that he's not interested so much in the long game. In fact, it's interesting to look at the amount of meaningful legislation that has been passed by this president. It's actually very little. He likes a deal, a very, flashy soundbite, beginning, middle, end, all in one sort of news piece. The more long-term policy he's just not that interested in. And I think that to some extent, that is a symbol for how he views sleep and maybe his overall health, that he's not interested in the long game. It's about what's happening now. And I hope that regardless of whether you see Donald Trump as a positive or a negative, we can all look at his excessive sleepiness and think about this as a bit of a cautionary tale in terms of ways we should approach our own sleep, our own lives, our own health, and how we can do it in a way that maximizes performance and maximizes profits and maximizes fun and maximizes all the things we want to get out of our life, but also still keeps an eye on that priority around sleep. So that's it. I want to thank Sleeping Dove for their sponsorship. If you want to prioritize sleep and you need something that makes you excited to close your laptop up and get into bed at night, check out Sleeping Dove with the panels. I will try to find that picture of my dogs tucked away in the little flaps, which I think is a very cute picture, but also B, kind of gives you an explanation of how this thing works because it's hard to verbally talk about how the sleeping dove works. Go check out their website. If you're somebody who struggles with getting hot or cold at night or different temperature preferences in your partner, you're going to love it. That's it. Sleep well. And until next time, sleep well.